This week, thorium nuclear reactors. What are they? Who's making them? Are they safer? And am I getting enough thorium in my diet?
As LA rebuilds from their recent wildfires, a new report suggests it would be quicker and easier to rebuild if they eliminate any natural gas infrastructure. Now, if they could just eliminate the recent trend of McMansions, they'd really have something.
We look at the longest range EVs on the market. There are some that will take you from the Gulf of Mexico all the way to the Gulf of America, Brian.
Pittsburgh Airport is putting a massive solar panel array on a former landfill. What used to be a pile of garbage is now a massive power generator. The chairman of this new venture? Oscar the Grouch.
All that and more this edition of the Clean Energy Show. This past weekend, heat wave hits our little place here in Canada, and 2 weeks after snow, it was hot and things are burning, which surprises me. But I looked and there was a grass fire. You know how we talked about how I said that one day this whole place where I'm living could go down because we have a pipeline field?
Yeah.
That is a long corridor that goes on forever, and at the end of it is the refinery, which has trains, and the trains create sparks. Well, that's exactly what happened on the weekend. They created a spark, and there was a fire just adjacent to my neighborhood, which is kind of a suburb of an old suburb, but a suburb of the city. And it burnt, fortunately, in parallel to the suburb. But everyone on my local Facebook group of the community here said, you know, I haven't heard this before, do your fire mitigation because, you know, you need, like I was saying, you have to cut down the shrubs here on the prairies of all places. Like it's not just forests that burn, but there's shrubs and grasses and weeds, and it went up. And it happened in 3 other places, Brian. It happened on the James Smith Cree Nation, where evacuations occurred and 3 homes were lost. That is a First Nation here in Saskatchewan, and as well as the Cowessness First Nation, where there was no structures lost, were no structures lost. And I went back in time and I looked at the humidity, and it was 15% Saturday afternoon. And that's one of those things that you look for now is wind and low humidity.
No, and I happened to check that for some reason. I saw that on my phone or something. I saw the humidity was super low that day, but very, very cold. And then suddenly it was super hot. I mean, I guess not dissimilar to the LA wildfires, which happened in January. Like essentially, this is the very start of spring for us.
Yeah.
And we're getting fires already.
So the Palisades fire, the relative humidity was 10% or even lower, perhaps, depending on the location. 12% for the Fort McMurray, Alberta fire, which was in the late teens. And that was very destructive to that city. And they had it was at the same time of year, Brian. It was almost the exact same time of year. It was the first couple of days of May. And it was temperatures approaching 30, which was very high and abnormal for them. It's abnormal for us. I think the normal is 17 Celsius here, although we get variations up and down quite easily here. And yeah, so that's what happened. So one of these days, and hear me out here, because I think it's going to happen. I think it's going to hit structures. It's going to hit a fence. The fence is going to light the house on fire. It's going to be high winds. The only thing that I have in my favor is that we don't usually have high winds from the east when it's dry and hot, because that would blow it from the train tracks here. But I think sometime this century it's going to happen. That sort of scenario is going to happen even here. But we are in danger, and I'm looking at things differently now as far as my, shrub protection, because the weeds in the pipeline grow literally bigger than I am. They're 6 feet tall. And you can't cut them the normal way. You can't take a weed whacker and cut them. You need something, not a chainsaw, but, the next best thing.
Yeah, I may have said this on the podcast, but I once used a chainsaw on the weeds in our backyard. They had just gotten out of control in a certain area. They were 3 or 4 feet tall, and I literally used a chainsaw to cut them down.
Why did you have a chainsaw?
For little tree stuff. It's a little electric chainsaw.
Oh, okay. It's not for serial killing.
Not a huge one, yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah, that's weird, but I was watching The Price is Right at the gym because the old people there, and when I say old people, they're probably my age.
Yeah.
For some reason, my hair hasn't turned gray yet. It's starting to think about it now, but you get this impression that they're a lot older than me, but they're probably my age. They're watching The Price is Right, so I'm an old man technically.
Yeah, so they still make the prices right?
They,
I wasn't even
yeah, Drew
sure. Yeah.
Carey. I think they do like 12 episodes a day and work like 3 weeks a year. It's
Yeah.
something crazy like that. So no wonder he keeps doing it. I think game shows are often like that, which I would do, I guess. I often wonder why they keep doing them. They must be sick of it. But you're
Yeah.
probably pulling in a lot of money for a relatively low number of days of work on your desert island with your feet up
Yeah.
on the beach the rest of the year.
Yeah, I know for Jeopardy, they shoot 2 days a week. So they do 5 episodes a day. So they get 10 episodes done in a week. And then obviously they're able to take a bunch of weeks off.
Yeah, I now I want to look it up because I think some of these game shows really have a crazy schedule. Anyway, I noticed they were giving away a Nissan Leaf EV electric vehicle.
Wow.
And the woman who had to do it, I first of all caught my eye and I said, is that an EV? Is that an... Yeah, it was, because I saw the closed caption said electric vehicle. And then she was going up in price. She had to put the slider across to these different prices. And I was yelling in my head, stop right there.
Stop.
But she kept going because she thought EVs were pricier than that and she lost. But I would have won. It was $29,000 for that EV in the States. So I knew that.
But that makes sense. If you're a contestant and if you're not following electric vehicles and you just hear the word electric vehicle, yeah, you probably just assume it's way more expensive.
So, there's a lot of talk about the, transition to electric transportation and I hear this daily, that you have to build up infrastructure. I heard it yesterday. You have to build up infrastructure and that takes time. Well, BC Hydro just put out a press release saying that they've tripled the number of chargers in the province of British Columbia, Canada, in the last year, tripled. And now I was there 2 years ago.
They already had more than most.
And they had more than most. It was a great network. I loved it. I mean, they didn't, go all the way up to Alaska, or not Alaska, but the Northern Territories of Canada, which they are now doing. They have a corridor, so you can actually drive up there and ultimately to Alaska, I believe. And, that's pretty remote, but they're doing it. And God, I wish our power company, I wish more utilities, because it's a public utility. Most of the utilities in Canada are public, and they're doing that, and it's great. And they're selling their own product. Why not?
Yeah.
Why not cut out the middleman and sell your own product and make the money back off of it? So tripling it in the last year just blew my mind. And I guess they're going to add 600 more ports in the coming year. They're not done yet. And they're going to, keep that going. There's almost 200,000 electric vehicles in British Columbia. So when you go there, when I went there 2 years ago, they're everywhere. Like you can't, I was having fun counting like 6 Teslas in a row sometimes, like it was just crazy. Yeah. And oil prices are down. But I was listening to somebody yesterday talk about how OPEC Plus might be doing this for nefarious reasons. Not only to kill U.S. shale companies, small and mid shale companies like they did more than 10 years ago, 2014 or something like that, when prices went, really down and crashed.
Yeah. Yeah, the OPEC nations, they have a lot of control over the price because they have so much cheap oil, they can just flood the market.
And some of their members are cheating, so they're trying to punish those members by putting more oil on the market. And it's kind of like, there was a paper or a letter written in 2018 by some oil analyst who said that, at some point before peak oil, just before peak oil demand, that OPEC or Saudi and the places with the cheapest oil will open up the taps to try and sell as much as they can for whatever price, because they're still making a profit on it. The whole thing's going to collapse. That's just a theory. But this might be an early example of something like that happening, that you can't, it's a world market. We hear, and we have oil in our province and a lot more next door in Alberta. Yeah, which are really freaking out now and threatening to leave Canada. Good luck with that, kids. So yeah, it's down, and it's getting to levels where it's not profitable. So there's not going to be any drill baby drilling whatsoever because it's not profitable, at least for the time being. Plus, the guy down south, the orange guy, has screwed up the world economy. So that affects oil sales, right? People drive less. They go to Walmart less. They do all kinds of things less because they go on vacation less. So yeah, that's
Well,
That's
I
what's
guess
going
the
on.
question is, we don't know how long this is going to go on for. So
We don't.
yes, the prices are low, but that's happened before when the prices are low and then they do come back again. So that's the question. When are they going to be low
But
permanently?
in order
if
to
that's
come
what
back,
OPEC
you have
wants?
to control, because there is a glut, and it's partially due to China. It's partially due to electrification in China, and we know that's not slowing down.
Yeah.
And we know other parts of the world. But the nefarious part is they think that maybe one theory is that they could keep the oil economy going, that they don't like to see Africa and Asian countries electrify. They want to make it so the oil economy works better. So there might be, like, I sometimes wonder, is a high oil price good for EV adoption for the transition, or is a low one better? So the oil companies sort of stop existing in some cases, but stop drilling, stop expanding. But maybe high oil prices is the best thing, but maybe they see that now. I don't know, but it's going to be interesting to watch whatever happens.
No, we know places like Africa are going heavy into electrification, and the high price of fuel is one of those reasons. So sure, it makes sense to maybe lower the price to get more customers where you're not previously getting them. All right, from Canary Media, backlash against dropping the natural gas ban to rebuild quicker in LA. So this happened initially back in January with the LA wildfires, which we talked about extensively. And we probably talked about this reversal of the ban as well. So LA had some really good bylaws in place to stop new buildings from being built with natural gas, because we all have to get off natural gas. Building electric buildings is better for the air, it's better for the environment, and so forth. But back in January, Karen Bass, the mayor of LA, she made an impassioned speech about rebuilding LA. And of course, we all would like to see that, rebuilding LA. But one of the things she said was, and we're going to drop that requirement. You can build with natural gas if you want, because we want this all to be rebuilt as quickly as possible. And essentially, she and other people just made an assumption somehow that rebuilding with natural gas would allow them to do it faster. But of course, it's not really true. So here's from Canary Media. Yeah, back in January, Karen Bass exempted replacement structures from this new all-electric building code. In LA, buildings accounted for more than 40% of LA's carbon pollution in 2022, more than any other sector. That surprises me. That seems like a place where transportation would be the biggest. But
is it air conditioning, or is it the building? Is it constant renovations? Is it the giant mansions? What is it?
Yeah, good question. I'm not sure. But the buildings in LA are a quarter of California's total emissions, which is wild.
You might expect to hear that from Canada when we have to heat these very cold buildings, but I'm surprised by that.
Much warmer climate. And then, even AC, I don't think they typically use as much AC as we might in the, it's a pretty, the temperature is, tempered by the ocean.
But it can be like
not always.
Perfect 72 degrees or 75. And if that is the case, then I hope that they have building codes for making cooling more efficient.
Anyway, the mayor's move reflects a tacit assumption that has been echoed even in the state assembly that rebuilding with gas, which many of the affected buildings had used, must be the easiest path for recovering communities. But a new report flips that premise on its head, citing available research and expert interviews. A team at the University of California, Berkeley Center for Law, Energy, and the Environment argues that all electric construction is likely to be the fastest and most cost-effective way to rebuild after the LA fires. A key reason is that two systems are more complicated to rebuild than one, which seems like
a no-brainer.
Huge common sense.
Yeah.
A no-brainer. If you just have one utility hookup to a whole neighborhood, that's obviously going to be easier, cheaper, and quicker than two utility hookups.
So every home is going to have electricity. You're not going to not have electricity in your home.
Exactly. That's the point of this. I mean, if every house ran all of its appliances off natural gas, then, maybe you would just go with natural gas. But every single house has to have electricity. So obviously,
and every house is going to need an air conditioner. So why not have a heat pump, which doubles as an air conditioner and heater, and an efficient way of heating? So you have less hookups. You don't have to pay for natural gas. You pay for just a hookup, the connection to the natural gas. and then you have to install the natural gas, and then that requires permits and everything like that. And everything like that takes time.
And it's just a continuation of the entrenched thinking. I mean, I kind of understand how they might kind of make that assumption because this is what all of us are used to. So surely
it's
this
political
must be
cowardice. It's like, I want to make it fast because people are going to be very upset, understandably, but they aren't doing this on a way that is smart. They should at least now encourage people the fact that this is the case, that, you can put in natural gas, but we think this is best and we need to educate people on that.
Well, yeah, and it ignores the idea of the long-term thinking, which, like, we all know we have to get off natural gas. This is like a given fact. And so even if you were to rebuild with electricity and natural gas, well, guess what? 10, 20 years from now, you're going to have to retrofit your home to get rid of the natural gas and maybe put in a larger electrical connection. So having to, retrofit all these homes 10 or 20 years from now is obviously going to cost a lot more money. But no, in other ways as well, this is cheaper. The report cites a 2019 study that estimates building a new all-electric home in most parts of California costs about $3,000 to $10,000 less than building a home that's also equipped with gas. An April analysis by the climate think tank RMI provides support, finding that single-family households switching from gas furnaces and conventional air conditioners to heat pumps would save an average of $300 a year on their monthly bills, on average, in LA County. And that's not going to be the same everywhere, but again, the mild climate, it's all cheaper. This is all cheaper.
Yeah. And I don't know why they're doing that. I think you could take that $10,000 of savings and put solar panels on your roof.
Yeah.
And I think I don't know. I can't remember. We got a few listeners in California that I can't remember if you need solar on your roof now for a new home build, and they exempted that as well. I think I remember that. But you could do that. You could put solar on your roof with the savings and then lower your utility bill all in one fell swoop, which I think is a great idea. And we'll talk more about that later in the show as well.
Yeah, we'll try and keep an eye on what's going on with that in California.
All right, let's jump in to the mailbag here. Earlier, this is from Claude. He says, here I may have come across some interesting news, and this could be some supplemental material for an upcoming podcast. China researchers have further developed a very safe thorium molten salt nuclear reactors. Cheers, guys. Thorium. Thorium, Brian.
China is planning to build a nuclear power plant on the edge of the Gobi Desert that would be the first in the world to use molten salt as the fuel carrier and coolant. It would also be the first to use the radioactive metallic element thorium as a fuel source instead of the uranium traditionally used in nuclear reactors.
So our listeners, just because of the type of thing we do here, always have a favorite or a technology that they like to boost, and this is one of them. Nuclear as a whole, of course, is a popular, even amongst the younger generations. What do you think?
Well, thorium is pretty new to me, but it sounds like it is a bit safer than the other types of nuclear. So, yeah, why not?
It should be a lot safer. And there's lots of talk now because China has a reactor online, but there's a big caveat to that. It's not what you think. It's not what you think. And this technology is 80 years in the making. It comes from the United States, but the United States abandoned it a long time ago. And China has picked up the baton on this. And we were talking last week, I think they approved 10 nuclear reactors per year or something like that now. And they did 11 last year, but their goal is to approve 10 new ones a year. So they have a small modular nuclear reactor operational. We don't know everything about it because it's China. It's an authoritarian state, and we don't hear everything. But it's very interesting that they're making progress on these things. Chinese state media is reporting that scientists in the country reached a milestone with thorium-based reactors. The reactor came online in June of last year, 2024. Now, researchers say it recently went through refueling without shutting down. So conventional reactors, a lot of people don't realize this, have to be shut down for like 1 month out of the year. So if you say that a nuclear reactor can put out 1 gigawatt of electricity, well, not all the time. So you have to take that down, and you're still paying for what you think is 1 gigawatt, but you're only getting 11/12 of that at most. And then it's like 90% of that sometimes. Anyway, the project's lead scientist shared the results during a closed meeting at the Chinese Academy of Sciences. I'll emphasize here that this isn't some massive power plant. Brian, the reactor is tiny. It's, you know how the U of S has a reactor, don't they, up 2.5 hours north of here?
Yeah, so this is the caveat.
Yeah, this is the caveat. It's tiny. It generates just 2 megawatts of heat, less than the research reactor on MIT's campus. Can't remember what the U of S does. Somebody's yelling at me right now.
It might be 20 megawatts.
Really? And
Yeah,
it's been
10
there,
or 20.
It's been there forever. It's kind of weird. My son goes to school there where there's a nuclear reactor. It freaks me out sometimes. But anyway, so Brian, you ask, what is thorium? Thorium is a silvery metal that's found naturally in rocks all over the world. It's actually about 3 times more common than uranium. And we have uranium in our basements here, don't we?
Yes.
The gases come up and can cause bad things to people's health in their homes where we live. Thorium can't be used as nuclear fuel right away. It has to be changed into another element, uranium-233, inside the reactor before it releases energy. So it's not the thorium that is reacting. It's changed into uranium. Then it becomes a reactor. How does a thorium reactor work? In the reactor, thorium absorbs particles called neutrons and transforms that into uranium-233. This new fuel then splits, a process called fission. We're all familiar with nuclear plants having fission and gives off heat. The heat is used to boil water into steam, which spins turbines and generates electricity, just like other nuclear and fossil fuel plants. But how is it different? The thorium, it uses thorium instead of uranium or plutonium, and it often designed as a molten salt reactor, which is what our listener was talking about, where fuel is mixed into hot liquid instead of a solid fuel rod. That gives us a whole bunch of advantages, including being much, much less dangerous and long-lasting. In fact, you can take spent uranium from current conventional reactors and reuse it there, which creates less, having to store the waste of nuclear, which is a challenge. It has a lower chance of melting down, but apparently not zero. So why is it considered safer? It has a lower pressure system. A lower pressure system. It doesn't use high pressure steam, so there's less chance of explosions. And, Brian, I like that. That's a lot better when there's less chance of explosions.
Not a big fan of explosions.
No. If it does fail, it fails safely. If something goes wrong, some designs let the liquid fuel drain into a tank and stop the reaction automatically. So even if everyone died from space lasers or food poisoning or, I don't know, COVID, can't easily be used for weapons. The byproducts are not ideal for making bombs, which is good. That's another problem when people start making nuclear reactors. And it is more stable fuel. Thorium doesn't react as dangerously as uranium in emergencies. So why aren't we using thorium already? Most nuclear technology was developed during the Cold War, when making weapons was a big goal. So uranium and plutonium were better for that. And there was lots of refining of that so that we could blow everyone up. Thorium reactors are still being tested and improved, and building a new reactor design takes a lot of time and a lot of money, but China can just say, do it, and they do it. Thorium reactors offer a new and potentially much safer way to create nuclear power. But Brian, of course, we need to decarbonize the world's electricity grids in 10 years. So I don't see one coming to our neighborhood anytime soon.
Yeah, well, again, it's that thing of if I had to build some kind of a power plant, solar, wind, and batteries is so simple. I'm not sure why anyone's going down these more complicated paths.
All right, let's move on.
All right, from Electrek, Pittsburgh Airport is turning a landfill into a solar powerhouse. And I like this story just because I like the idea of putting solar panels on a landfill. That's really all they're doing here. There was a big field of sort of a mound of garbage. Every city has at least one of these.
I have one by my house. They turned it into a park, and They're finally starting to plant trees around it. It's like 100 years old. It's small, but we toboggan on it. With the kids. I've had to see the chiropractor. It's a pretty serious toboggan hill afterwards. But yeah, I go for walks there now because they created a path, which seemed like a no-brainer. And then you go have nice elevation changes because of the trash you're walking on. It's all harmless.
Yeah, so a few interesting things in this story. Pittsburgh International Airport already is the first airport in the U.S. to be fully powered by a microgrid, which is interesting.
It's
And now
weird
they're
because it's like it's natural gas. Why do you need your own microgrid from natural gas for the airport? Having said that, the UK airport that went down, that was a major problem.
The major problem was the power.
The power went out for days. Yeah, and that was, a transformer blew up and the whole airport went down.
Yeah, well, I guess your microgrid could go down too, so.
Sure. Well, plane could crash into it.
But yeah, so it is partly powered by natural gas, but they do have solar panels, and now they're adding a bunch of more. They're adding 11,216 panels to the already existing array, so it's an additional 4.7 megawatts. That's enough to cut around 5 million pounds of carbon emissions annually. This expansion is going to sit on 12 acres of land that used to be a landfill adjacent to Pittsburgh Airport's 8-acre solar array, which they already have, which has nearly 10,000 panels. So we're adding another 11,000 to that. This new and old infrastructure just off the airport exit from I-376 supports the airport's 23 megawatt solar and natural gas microgrid that was launched back in 2021. So it's not quite online yet. This is going to be 2027 when it's fully operational.
So this is interesting because we know that some air travel is going to electrify. There are small planes that exist now. They're developing medium planes, medium range, short hop flights for passenger jets. That takes a long time to get certified. But we know they're coming because they exist. And the economics are there because it's a lot cheaper to fly that way, at least for the time being. I mean, one day I hope to see, hydrogen or some sort of powered non-fossil fuel jets, right?
Yeah, and it does say in the story that they are looking at doing sustainable air fuels in the same area as part of the same microgrid. So
I've heard bad things about that. I have to research it more, but yeah, there's a lot of negativity about that because they're not really sustainable. Like if you grow crops, that's not really sustainable. You can grow more crops in the same land, but it's still using a lot of energy that way. But airports, my point was that, maybe you want to fuel these planes with the solar that's available at airports, right? Some of even when it's just smaller, because it'll take an awful lot of power, more than a solar farm can have in that area. But there's a lot of land on an airport. To have a crisscrossing 2 runways like we do, that's a huge area of land. It takes up the area of a town, or a medium-sized town practically. So there's lots of unused land there that you could put solar panels on. The problem is you don't want them reflecting the sun into the pilots, right? But a lot of solar farms now are on movable. They're on a single axis, to follow the sun. So at least they could know what the dangers would be for that.
Yeah, or instead of pointing them south, maybe it'd be better if you point some east and some west, like that kind of configuration. So I'm sure it can be done, but it's a no-brainer. Airports have tons of land that is between the runways. So it makes total sense.
Yeah, I think we'll see that at an airport or 2 in Europe. I think maybe they're already talking about doing that. There's probably an example or 2 out there. So last week, Eric wrote in about his need for an EV to go 320 miles round trip. So he goes skiing from the Bay Area to Tahoe up to 30 times a year. And he wants a longer EV. He doesn't want to stop. His wife doesn't want to stop. So I suggested this Chevrolet Silverado pickup truck with up to 492 miles of range, or that's 800 kilometers for the rest of us outside the United States. And I thought we could take a look at the longest range EVs out there for people like Eric who think they need a long range. And I know there are a lot of people who are not making the transition because of that. But let's look at what is available right now. And we know Brian, that whatever's available now is going to improve. There's going to be a lot more options available, but this is what's available right now. Next week, next month, next year, could be a totally different story, but this is what we have. The Lucid Air Grand Touring. This is a sedan with a maximum range of 512 miles or 824 kilometers. So you could throw some skis in there, Eric. Aren't people like Eric, you know?
Yeah, I'm not sure what the storage is like, but yeah, I'm assuming, you know, I always like those cars that had a ski pass-through in the back seat.
Yeah.
That would be amazing. So yeah, that's an incredible range, but of course, that is still an expensive car, over $100,000, I believe.
And the Silverado is not cheap either. It's got a huge battery, and it's not the most efficient vehicle out there, but people love them. Like, the reviews love them. Everyone loves them. The only criticism is that it's not as efficient as it maybe could be. But this pickup truck offers a range of 460 miles or 740 kilometers, I think, in the longest range. Rivian R1S Dual Max battery. This SUV achieves a range of 410 miles or 660 kilometers. Tesla Model S, which you have, and that goes up to 647 kilometers. You had different wheels, so it was down to like 600 or something.
Depends on the wheel size, but yeah, 600 with the larger wheels and then 647 with the smaller wheels. But yeah, and that range has proven to be, you know, more than adequate for me, for sure.
And that's about 402 miles at the most for that car. The Mercedes-Benz EQS 450 Plus, this luxury electric car offers a range of 442 miles or 711 kilometers. Woo, that'd be fun. Rivian R1T Dual Max battery. This pickup truck offers a range of 420 miles, 676 kilometers of range. And if memory serves me, I think the review's saying that the Rivians don't get great range compared to what they say they do. Kind of like Teslas are often
Haven't heard
a little bit under the EPA. But the Cadillac, the GM cars, by the way, are usually better than EPA. So this is an example. The Cadillac Escalade IQ claims an estimated range of 460 miles or 740 kilometers. Well, you know, probably start picking up these things on the used market one of these days and maybe not be such a bad deal.
Yeah, no, I'm impressed with all these. I mean, they're not cheap, but it's great. And the thing to point out, of course, this is the rated range, which is very much the same as the rated gas mileage of a car. Is, you know, you never usually get that. And with EVs, it's on the highway when you don't get that range. EVs do better in the city and worse on the highway, which is the opposite of gas cars.
Yeah, and that's something to keep in mind. I think they will give you the highway range, and if you don't, and you're thinking about buying a car, there's people out there, good people like Out of Spec, which will, and State of Charge will do tests in good conditions. But
yeah, and evdatabase.org, which is a site we used to mention, they do those kind of testings, and they'll also do different temperature testing as well. So they'll do a city range and highway range in the summer, and then they'll do city and highway in the winter, and they'll give you all those figures.
Then the winter range is nothing what our winters are like, by the way.
It was still a minus 10 Celsius or something, which is nothing.
Oh, how horrible is that? That's like spring to us. Chinese EVs was the longest range. I mentioned these not because you can buy one in most places. Some of them you can. Australia and Europe, of course, you can buy some Chinese EVs. I mention them because this is what they're ahead on the tech, right? This is the future. We look to China to see what the future will hold.
Yeah.
We know this is available. So the Neo ET7 is an executive sedan featuring a 150 kilowatt hour battery, offering a range up to I can't read this without laughing. 1,044 kilometers or 649 miles. And that's a person who is too lazy to stop and go to the bathroom and plug in for the 5 minutes it would take in China or do a battery swap or whatever. It's the only battery electric sedan to achieve over 1,000 kilometers range in real life range challenge. The BYD Han EV, this mid-sized luxury sedan, I feel like I'm an announcer on the Price is Right, can be yours. Yeah. This mid-sized luxury sedan can travel up to 684 kilometers or 425 miles on a single charge. The GAC Aeon LX Plus, that is 676 kilometers, 420 miles. The Zeekr 001 is an SUV known for its Quillen batteries. Can achieve a range of 1,032 kilometers or 641 miles of range with the optional 140 kilowatt unit battery. The ArcFox Alpha S, I haven't even heard of that one. That's 649 kilometers or 404 miles. And the IM Motor L6 is a range of 620 miles. So around 1,000, but I've heard talk of a 1,500, like new batteries that would offer up to 1,500 kilometers range. Don't know if they'll do that because gas cars don't go 1,500 kilometers. So what are you doing that for? Maybe, I don't understand why you would do that.
Yeah, but of course, that improving energy density of the batteries is good news for things like electric airplanes, which are going to need much more energy-dense batteries.
And by the way, 1,500 kilometers is 930 miles. Thanks for writing in. We'll have more letters and listener story suggestions on our Patreon show later this week, including topics like carbon capture, Bitcoin mining, and Koch Industries, and more. Going to basically do a mailbag episode and clean up some of the suggestions and discussions from people who have been writing into us.
Yeah, and if you do want to write into us, it is cleanenergyshow@gmail.com.
You can leave us a voicemail at speakpipe.com/cleanenergyshow. Join the conversation on our Patreon page and get access to additional content, and that is free or paid. It's up to you. Thanks to our Patreon members, some of whom get a shout-out on the first podcast of the month. Clean Club Executive members Green Bastard, Brent Routley, Clean Club Plus, Bob Armstrong, John Heese, and how do you pronounce that? Because he told us last week.
He explained how you pronounce it. I think it's Hayes.
Hayes? Okay. You have to remember that now, John.
Yeah.
Wes S., the Clean Club members, Andy Fessler, Josh Engen, Sean Ennis, Sean Hines, Timo Kellenberger, Peter O'Donnell, Weldon Penner, Roshan Gervais, and Richard W. Support this podcast by joining our Patreon today at patreon.com/cleanenergypod. And I'll also, on our Patreon episode that's coming up next, I'm going to open this letter from Enbridge Pipeline Company because I live next to a pipeline and we're going to see what its safety recommendations are because I often get mail. I even got a free thumb drive from them once for talking to their people at the door.
Sorry, we might blow you up. Here's a free thumb drive. So the envelope says pipeline safety information on it, which is a little bit ominous.
It is. And there's a online survey code. Maybe I'll do that. Click before you dig. It has my specific address on it, so they know who I am. You know, when you click before you dig, I've said this on the show, but we have lots of new listeners to the show. If I want to put in a post or a fence post or something, and you do the dial to make sure you're not hitting utility lines, I also get all the pipeline people, and there's not just one. There's a dozen of them. There's a dozen pipelines that go through here. There's different chemicals and things going through pipes, and it's not good.
So it's a massive operation if you want to put in a fence post at your house.
Yes, and there's no alley because there was a surveying error, so my fence is right against the pipeline. So, I'm living on borrowed time, but that's it. Yeah, coming up next, if I'm still alive, is the lightning round. Stay tuned. It's time for the lightning round.
The lightning round is a fast-paced look at the latest headlines in climate, clean energy, and transportation.
Brian, the show's going by too fast this week. I'm lamenting it being over. It's a good thing we have a Patreon episode coming up.
Time flies when you're having fun.
Pakistan, home to 240 million people, executing a grassroots solar revolution, which we've discussed on the show many times. It installed 15 gigawatts of capacity of solar last year. And their peak demand is only 30 gigawatts. Wow. So the most the grid gives, was done in solar last year alone, say at noon on a sunny day across the country, would give you half of what the grid needs. And the crazy thing is, it's not large solar farms, it's on homes. It's on factories, it's on businesses because the grid is so terrible there and prices are increasing and unreliable. grid too.
And if they were working on thorium, they'd have 2 megawatts and then something bigger maybe 10 years from now.
Oh, Brian burns the nuclear industry. Ouch. That story's on CNN if you want to see it. The Chinese autonomous driving technology company WeRide and U.S. ride-hailing giant Uber Technologies have expanded their partnership to offer robotaxi service in 15 additional cities in international markets, some of them in the Middle East over the next few years, including Europe and the Middle East. Big week, Brian, for robotaxi news, okay? I don't know if it's because Tesla is testing in Austin or going to launch something in Austin and people are speeding up. They're worried about it. I don't know if they're worried about it. I'm not worried about it. I don't think Tesla's going to have anything that great anytime soon. I think it's going to take a while before they get up and running. But yeah, that's happening. And Uber is teaming up with May Mobility to deploy thousands of AVs, autonomous vehicles, in the United States. So we talk about Waymo all the time because Waymo is kind of at the forefront, and you were seeing Waymos in your recent trip to LA. But yeah, May Mobility, which is someone we haven't really talked about. I'm sure we mentioned them a few years ago, but right now they are actually getting up and going with Uber. So Chinese startup Momenta partners with Uber as well to launch robotaxi service in global markets. I guess the name of the story here, the headline, is that Uber is getting big on autonomous vehicles because they have 3 partnerships here in different parts of the world. They're seeing that.
Yeah, and you've got a picture of the May Mobility vehicle, and it looks a bit like the robotaxis I saw in Los Angeles with the sort of extra machine on top and little extra sensors.
Right. So that's the LiDAR that goes on top. And yeah, so Chinese startup Momenta partners with Uber, and that will launch a robotaxi service in Europe next year. So yeah, that's from China EV News. You can see the link there. India has released a gene-edited rice to its farmers. The government of India has released a gene-edited rice to its farmers. And get this, it offers 25 to 30% higher yield with potential down the road for increased drought and salt resistance. I didn't know you had to have salt resistance. But that's interesting. Not sure where that's pertinent unless it's the agricultural land, but I don't think you can use seawater on it. The lower fertilizer needs as well as a possibility down the road. And because this is made through targeted gene edits, not genes from another species, it's not classified as GMO. Ooh, it's time for a CS Fast Fact. The oil-rich province of Alberta, next door here, in Canada, has set its provincial budget based on West Texas Intermediate crude oil, that is, being at $68 per barrel or better. Well, Monday, WTI was down under $57 a barrel. Now, Brian, each dollar under $68 costs the province $750 million a year. So if it stayed like that for a year, every dollar would cost that. If you do that, that's $8.25 billion they would be short. So
yeah. So this could turn into a bit of a disaster if the price stays low, which we'll see.
We'll see. But it seems like the oil people have been forecasting fairly low prices for this year. Not that low, but the rogue states and OPEC Plus are going crazy, and who knows what's going to happen. And who knows what's going to happen with the economies as well. Hopefully it's not as bad as the worst case scenarios. Arval UK leasing companies tested 8,000 EVs across 30 different car brands in long-term use and found that the average battery state of health was 93% at 43,500 miles, and beyond 124,000 miles, the average was close to 90%.
Yeah.
Would you say 124,000 miles might be the average sort of use for a car before it goes to die?
Yes, typically around here, I think that's about what people do before it goes to the junker, so that's not bad.
No, I mean, if you're looking at a car like that, that's maybe like my son's car, which is 23 years old, but, it's barely hanging on.
Yeah.
He's got to try and change the spark plugs this week. We'll see how that goes.
Oh, nice. Does he have a spark plug wrench?
No.
Hmm.
He's lamenting the cost of buying one. He has no idea. He's slowly learning what it's like to be us. He hates the fact that I'm liking that.
But yes, we do know that EV batteries, they do degrade over time, so you don't get the full range of the battery after the vehicle is old. But with this stat, 90% after 124,000 miles. I think I'd be pretty happy with that if I had a car with that many miles.
And
on it.
if you're not, you just buy that's why another reason why you buy a battery that's bigger, the biggest battery you can afford, because you have that, you don't have to worry about that because it's 10% less, even if you owned a car a long, long time.
No, and often the first few percent happens in the first year or two of the vehicle, right? Like you sort of go down to 95% of the battery, fairly quickly, and then it stabilizes.
Yeah. But, that's not bad at all. And yeah, I don't know. I can't complain about that. That's better than it has been. And I do know that there's battery technology, battery chemistries that are announced in China that say they're going to go a lot further than that without degradation. But maybe you have to pay money for that, and maybe you just buy a bigger, older technology battery. And, there's all kinds of different variations you can go. But yeah, there is a lot to think about sometimes when you do buy an electric car. But if you buy a big-ass battery, less to think about, which is why we recommend doing that. The public fast charging network run by BC Hydro is gradually expanding, and I have a link to that in evchargingstations.com, which is something we don't often mention on the show.
Yes, and you mentioned that earlier in the show, BC, massive expansion of charge plugs for cars.
So Waymo says its robotaxis are up to 25 times safer for pedestrians and cyclists. Yeah. We'll see how that goes.
I hope so. Yeah.
I hope it is. One thing that I like that I don't have in my car, we have a car that's 2 years old now. You have all these safety systems. You have a pedestrian safety alert, but now they have cyclist safety alerts. And cyclists.
Oh, it's a separate thing?
Yeah, well, it's an additional thing. So before we had pre-collision alert, now we have pedestrian alerts, and now you can have cyclist alerts, and that's across the board in all brands. So that's just something that they have now. So that would be nice.
But you don't mind running down cyclists, so you turned it off.
Yeah, I turned it off. Yeah, of course. No, I'm a pro cyclist guy, as are you. And we both enjoy cycling and have in the past. And it's an issue because we hate to see that. And I know there's cycling deaths around here from time to time, and it's just horrible. 70% of ferries currently on order globally now feature electric powertrains. I was surprised by that. That's moving quicker than I think was on my radar. Norway has about 70 electric ferries running already, and there are likely more than 200 globally, it's estimated, and there are 15,400 ferries in operation around the world. So that's a pretty significant chunk of that, and as they move forward, hopefully they electrify instead of going the old way.
Yeah, and there was a story this week, the world's largest electric ferry is now sailing, and I forget the stats, but it's one of along the large end of a ferry to shepherd passengers between two places. The biggest one is now in service with a massive battery.
It looks like a smaller cruise ship, like it looks a fairly significant beast. Yeah. And finally this week, by 2027, solar panels will be legally required on nearly all homes built in England. Installation is expected to add £3,000 to £4,000 on construction costs. That's all? That's not bad.
That seems low, but
that seems low. Maybe it's just like you can have a pretty small system, or maybe it's cheaper when you do it with the house being constructed. I don't know. But it could save homeowners over $1,000 annual or £1,000 annually on energy bills. Labour plans to build, that's the government there, plans to build 1.5 million homes by the end of the current parliament, decarbonize the electricity grid by 2030, and cut average household energy bills by £300 per year. And it drives me crazy. We hear it all the time here that power bills will go up if we put more solar out on the grid. Coal's the way to go. By the way, we're getting 6 electric buses on the road. Did you know that? In our city?
Oh, I didn't know, in our city.
Yeah. This week, as we speak, there's 6 electric buses. I want to go find one. But I don't know how I can do that. I'll just have to go look at the government in England will also offer loans and grants to help install solar panels on existing homes. And you'll have 2 years from the start of construction of a new home in the UK before you have to have them up and running. So that's, sometimes it can take a year to build a home if you're slow, if you're a small contractor. The Unite Union supported net zero goals, but criticized the lack of green job investments. Well, that's fine. Greenpeace welcomed a solar panel mandate, saying it will save money and make use of free rooftop energy. A government spokesman reaffirmed solar panels' importance in lowering bills, strengthening energy security, and achieving net zero through the Future Homes Standard. Lower monthly bills to allow, if you have, it's going to add £3,000 to £4,000 to your mortgage, right? Yeah. But that payment that you have will be offset by a lower energy bill. And, that's one thing that we thought of when we bought this house. Like, the mortgage is this per month, but the utility bills will be less because it's a passive solar house and because now we have solar panels on it, and all that makes a difference. Although I think it would be better to finance your solar panels separately instead of having them in a 30-year mortgage or something, because then it's more interest and less advantageous.
Yeah, and quicker payback, I assume. Your Skype is frozen, but I'm going to keep talking like it's all right. But I'm impressed by the number of planning to build 1.5 million homes by the end of the current parliament. That's an impressive number. They must have a bit of a housing crisis in the UK like we kind of have here in Canada. We have a housing shortage, and there's a lot of talks going on right now with our government to how to, kickstart this and get more homes built. But I haven't heard any clean energy provisions on that here in Canada, but it would be amazing if that was part of it.
Yeah, that's just not popular here now. That's a touchy political issue because of the oil-rich provinces suffering. And that's the lightning round.
All right, and that's our show for the week. You can contact us cleanenergyshow@gmail.com, on social media, Clean Energy Pod. And please join our Patreon for free to get some special posts and a nice little community. The link is in the show notes. And we have a merch store. That link is in your show notes as well if you want to buy some Clean Energy Show merch. And if you have time, please give us a rating on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. And remember to hit that subscribe or follow button.
All right, we'll see you later this week on our Patreon show. Thanks for listening.
Yeah, see you next week.
The Clean Energy Show.